You may have heard at the moment that there is a lot of talk about a wealth tax and whether or not this will work, if it's appropriate, if it's fair, and if it will just cause rich people to leave. In this video, I want to look at the calculations behind the wealth tax in the style of a functional skills exam paper to decide whether or not we think it is fair, it will work, or if it's unfair and it will cost people to leave. Right, let's have a go. Suppose there's an annual wealth tax of 2% applied to assets above £10 million. Now, imagine someone's assets earn a 2.5% annual return, like interest, and that person does no extra work or spending. After 1 year, once they've paid both the wealth tax and the income tax on their returns at the highest rate, how much would they be worth if they started with A, £20 million, B, £10 million, or C, £1 billion? Okay, let's take a look. Now, in order to answer this question, what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to think about the order in which these things are applied. So we're going to assume that all of these things are going to happen at the end of the year. Now, in order for this to happen, what I first of all believe would need to be the case is first, they would get their interest. Second, you'd pay income tax. And then third, you'd pay the wealth tax. So let's take a look. So let's say we're starting with £20 million. In order to find out the amount of interest we're going to make on this, what we need to do is work out 2.5% of 20 million. Well, to find 2.5% of something, what we do is we do 2.5 divided by 100, which gives us 0.025, and then multiply that value by 0.025, and we'll find out 2.5%. So let's get out the calculator and do that. 20 million multiplied by 0.025. So here we go, and that equals £500,000. Let me write that down. Now, the higher rate of income tax is charged at 45%. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that they're going to pay 45% interest on all of this £500,000, which they've received from their interest. Now, if we're paying a 45% tax, what that means is we're starting with 100%, we're taking away 45%, so we're keeping 55% of that value. So in order to find 55% of 500,000, what we're going to do is we're going to do 55 divided by 100, which gives us 0.55, and then if we do our £500,000 multiplied by 0.55, that will tell us how much of that interest we get to keep. So here we go, 500,000 multiplied by 0.55. So they'll get to keep £275,000 of that £500,000 interest. So now what we can do, we can add this to the £20 million to get £20,275,000. And this is what their assets will now be worth at the end of the year once their interest has been applied. But there's another step. The wealth tax is only being applied to the amount of money above the £10 million. So what I need to do is I need to take away £10 million from this, and what I'll be left with is £10,275,000, which needs to have the wealth tax applied. So we need to find out what the wealth tax is. So the wealth tax is 2%. So again, to find 2%, we divide it by 100, which equals 0.02. And now anything we multiply by 0.02 will tell us 2%. So let's do 10,275,000 multiplied by 0.02. And here we go. This will be the amount of wealth tax they have to pay. So the wealth tax will equal £205,500. Right, now the question is, how much money are they going to be left with at the end of the year, and is this wealth tax fair? So let's have a look. So before the wealth tax, they have the £20,275,000. So what we now need to do is to remove the £205,500 from that and see what they're left with. So let's do that on the calculator. So we have 20,275,000, take away our wealth tax of 205,500, and that leaves them at the end of the year with £20,069,500. But if we remember at the start of the year, they had 20 million. That means they're still £69,500 up after having not done anything. Okay, so is this fair? You decide. Right, let's have a look at scenario 2. In scenario 2, we're looking at somebody with £100 million with the same interest rate of 2.5%, the income tax of 45%, and the wealth tax of 2%. So let's start at the beginning. So first of all, we need to work out their interest. So we're going to have 100 million. We're going to times this by 0.025, and we're going to find out what that gives us here. And I'll do that on the calculator. So we've got 100 million multiplied by 0.025, and that equals 2,500,000. Okay, so that is going to be the amount of money that this person earns in interest before income tax is applied to the interest. So now what we need to do is we need to apply the income tax. So that's going to be the 2.5 million interest that they've earned multiplied by the 0.55 to give us that 45% reduction. Okay, so let's work that out on the calculator here. So we've got the 2.5 million there times 0.55, and that equals £1,375,000. So that is what the person with £100 million will gain a year just through interest. So here we go, I'll write that down there. So this is currently the amount of extra money that they've gained this year. So what we now need to do is we need to add this to their 100 million. So if I look at this, 100 million add 1,375,000 is going to be £101,375,000. So then we've got to take off 10 million from this because they get the £10 million grace period. So let's take away the 10 million, and that's going to leave us with £91,375,000 in which the wealth tax is applied. So now we've got this. In order to find out how much wealth tax we're going to pay, we've got to multiply this by 0.02 in order to find 2%, and that will be the wealth tax. So let's get the calculator out. Okay, so here we go, 91,375,000 multiplied by 0.02. Okay, so this person's wealth tax is going to be £1,827,500. Okay, so what I can see here is that if you have £100 million, it's that your wealth tax will be more than your unearned earnings. So it is likely that this person is going to have a drop down from their 100 million. So let's work out what that drop down will be. So let's have a think about this. So what we have is we're going to start off with their 100 million, and then we're going to add the money that we get for free, and then we're going to have to take away the wealth tax. So let's work this out on the calculator and find out how much they're left with. Here we go, we've got 100 million, add the 137,000, and then take away the 1,827,500. So after a wealth tax is applied, this person will be left with £99,547,500. So actually, let's see what is that as a hit on their million. So here we go. Let's take away the 100 million from that. So with the wealth tax, that person will have had to take a hit of £452,500 on their £100 million assets. But so let's quickly see what that would be as a percentage. So if we do that, divided by 100 million, multiplied by 100. So really what that would be is that would see them losing 0.4525% of their wealth. Okay, now the question is that fair? Right, now let's have a look at the billionaire. So here we go, we've got a billionaire here. So the billionaire, same interest, same income tax, same wealth tax. So it's going to be a lot of zeros this time. So a billion looks like this. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's first of all find out how much interest they naturally receive on this money. So we're going to multiply this by 0.025. Okay, if we do 1 billion multiplied by 0.025, let's have a look. 1 billion, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, multiplied by 0.025, then that is £25 million. Okay, so that is how much interest somebody with £1 billion could expect to receive a year. What we need to do is we need to times this by 0.55, because remember they're going to be paying income tax on this, so we need to see how much of that 25 million they actually get to keep. Okay, so here we go. They get to keep the 13,750,000. So I'm going to write that down here. So I'll put down the calculations that we did there. 25 million multiplied by 0.55, and that equals 13,750,000. Okay, right. Now let's add that to their fortune. So what they get is they've got 1,013,750,000 pounds. Now remember, the wealth tax is not applied to the first 10 million, so we can take 10 million off this. Okay, so we take 10 million off this, and we are left with 1,003,750,000. Okay, right. So the last bit we've got to do here is we've got to work out what the wealth tax is. So we're going to have to multiply this by 0.02 to find out the wealth tax, and then we'll be able to compare that to how much money they've earned, think about it with the billion that they started off with, and see how far off the billion they are at the end of the year. So let's have a look. So let's type in 1,375,000 million. There we go. And times that by 0.02. That means we have to pay a wealth tax of £20,075,000. So let's now look at the three key bits of information here. So we've got the £1 billion that they start with. We've got the 13,750,000 that they receive. And then we've got the 20 million wealth tax. So what we've got, let's add this. So we've got this, add this, and then we're going to take away this. Okay, so let's work this all out on the calculator and see how it goes. So we have 1 billion, there we go, 1 billion. We've got the 9 zeros there, plus the 13,750,000. So there we go. And then let's take away the wealth tax. Here we go, and they're left with £993,675,000. So if we take away 1 billion from this, that tells us how much the tax will cost them, which will be £6,325,000. And then let's look at that as a percentage of their wealth. So that out of 1 billion, and then we times that by 100. And so there we go, that will be a 0.6325% loss for their wealth. Okay, anyway, that's that. Let me know if that was useful, if you think that's fair, or if you think we need to adjust the model. Leave your views in the comments. Thank you very much, and catch you soon.